Discover 10 sinister haunted houses in Kentucky, spine-chilling encounters exposed. In Oak Hollow, the flickering streetlights cast long shadows that seem to reach, clawing at the very foundations of Sarah's crumbling home. Every night, the wind howls through the cracks, a mournful cry that turns her heart to ice. But it wasn't just the wind that disturbed her, the whispers, they were there too, hovering just beyond the silence, waiting to draw closer. Sarah gripped the edge of the kitchen table, her fingers white against the dark wood, as she listened to Tyler ramble on about ghost hunting. The shows had taken root in his tiny mind, filling him with restless energy, visions of haunted houses dancing through his thoughts. It made it impossible to sleep sometimes. "Mom, they're south this place, Hayes Manor," he had mentioned excitedly last week, eyes wide with that spark of youthful thrill. "It's supposed to be super haunted." Each word shot through Sarah's anxious heart like a warning bell. Days turned like thick molasses until strange occurrences crept into their already fraught lives. Tyler insisted he had friends from the manor, claiming to hear them call his name softly in the dark. Each time he spoke about them, the air turned heavy, the shadows deeper. "They want to talk to you, Mom," he would say, fear and excitement mingling in his voice. Yet, what terrified Sarah more was not just Tyler's stories, but the unsettling energy that filled the corners of their home, the way the lights would flicker out without warning, the inexplicable cold drafts that seeped through the walls like specters. Then came the noises, scratches on the walls at night, like fingernails clawing to be let in. Sleep evaded Sarah, the nights melded into one unending cycle of fear. As she shoved the plates into the sink after another long shift at the diner, she couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was brewing. The neighbors, once familiar faces, now wore masks of suspicion, their smiles tight, their gazes sharp. No one spoke openly anymore, secrets roiling beneath the surface like a venomous tide. One night, while searching for the source of a particularly bone-chilling draft, Sarah stumbled upon an old, dusty door behind a dislodged piece of furniture. It creaked loudly as she opened it, revealing a hidden basement that twisted downward in darkness, the mouth of a buried tunnel. Fear seized her heart, clawing at her gut as she thought about what lay below, a tunnel leading straight to Hayes Manor. She felt a jolt of urgency. Who could know she discovered this? Who else had walked these forsaken paths? Tyler's obsession with the ghosts seemed innocent enough, until his eyes took on a knowing glint. "They want you to come to the manor, tonight," he said, breathless, trembling as if gripped by a violent chill. "They said it's your only chance to save us." A wave of dread crashed over her. Could she risk exposing them to whatever was lurking in the dark corners of her own home? As the world around her blurred in panic, one thought screamed louder than any whisper: some shadows aren't just tricks of the light, they're alive. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. They were not just haunting, they were demanding. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her chest like a drum in the silence. A million thoughts twisted her mind, and she knew the truth was slipping through her fingers. The manor wasn't merely a threat, it was the key to a nightmare unfolding in their lives, tightening its grip with every passing moment. As night cloaked Oak Hollow, Sarah realized they were deeper in the woods of fear than she ever wanted to be. The air thickened around her as she faced the chilling truth: a chase for security could lead them straight into the jaws of darkness. The whispered warning seemed to grow louder, echoing in her mind as she stood at the precipice, teetering on the edge between safety and the unknown. The clock ticked ominously in the background, marking the minutes with muted dread. Shadows danced across the room as Sarah turned to face Tyler, whose small figure was growing increasingly tense. "What do you mean, they want me to come?" The words slipped from her lips like ice, chilling their already frigid surroundings. Tyler's eyes were wide, flickering in the dim light, filled with an energy that disturbed her deeply. I don't know. I just know they said it was important. We have to go, Mom. His voice trembled, a mix of fear and thrill radiating from him. In that moment, she felt as if he were something other than just her son. The boy she had cradled now seemed like a vessel for something ancient and dark. What if we don't? She whispered, her pulse quickening. What if it gets worse? He clasped her hand, his grip too tight, almost desperate. Mom, it already is worse. What's happening here? It's not just whispers. They're angry. I can feel it. And I think it's because of us. The weight of his admission hung between them, thick like fog. An involuntary shiver crawled down her spine as she imagined shadowy forms stretching out, reaching for them from the very walls around their home. Let's just talk about this, she stammered, her mind racing for alternatives. We can figure something out, right? But Tyler shook his head fiercely, tears pooling in his eyes. We can't run from this. You'll have to see. His words struck her like a blow, and as she looked at him, truly looked, she realized the innocence was gone. Her little boy was slipping away, consumed by something she couldn't comprehend. Panic surged in her, boiling over the edges of her resolve. The front door creaked, drawing her attention. Was it just the wind or something more sinister? Her heart sank as she realized it wasn't the draft that sent shivers through her bones. It was the unmistakable sensation of being watched, as if the darkness itself was alive with intent. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging her into despairing blackness. Tyler squeaked in fright, clutching her. Mom! Please! The power surged back, illuminating a pair of eyes staring through the kitchen window. They were impossibly dark, voids that seemed to reflect nothing but the abyss. Get away from the window! Sarah shouted, yanking Tyler back as she sprinted towards the door. Panic clawed at her throat as she peered outside, but the figure had vanished, leaving only a whisper of motion in the shadows. We have to go. Now. She didn't know where their only route led, but fear propelled her in the direction of the basement door. She fumbled with the handle, her breath hitching. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back to run into the night. But she couldn't abandon Tyler, not now. Mom? Tyler's voice shook with uncertainty. What if you don't come back? Her heart plummeted. I will come back. I promise. With one final breath, she opened the door and plunged into darkness. The air thickened, laden with damp earth and a faint metallic scent that turned her stomach. She grasped Tyler's hand tightly, their fingers threaded together in an unbreakable bond of fear and desperation. The tunnel yawned before them, an unpredictable abyss. What awaited them inside, she couldn't begin to fathom. But deep down, she felt it, a thread of ancient power tingling at the back of her mind, pulling her onwards, deeper into the unknown. She felt Tyler squeeze her hand tighter as he whispered, "They're waiting, Mom, they want you to see what's hidden." What had she gotten them into? She had to know, but with that knowledge came a frigid realization. Could she truly confront whatever awaited them, and would she return whole if she did? The shadows weighed heavier with each step. Would they lead her to answers? Or would they consume them both? As the darkness swallowed them, the whispers grew louder, unintelligible but insistent. They surged into her mind, hungry for clarity, eager for release. Then a voice, clear as day, broke through the chaos. "Welcome to Hayes Manor," with trepidation coursing through her veins. Sarah whispered back, "What do you want from me?" And somewhere in the depths, the answer lay within reach, shrouded in a veil of terror. The echoes of their footsteps reverberated within the damp confines of the basement, each step tainted with the dread that thrummed in the air. Thick moisture clung to the walls, the smell of earth overwhelming her senses. The darkness wrapped around them like a shroud, obscuring even the remnants of their warmth, and Sarah felt Tyler shiver beside her. "Mom, it's so dark," he whispered, his voice tremulous, barely audible. "I know, honey. Just stick close to me." She tried to sound steady, but the quiver in her own voice betrayed her. Each heartbeat echoed as the oppressive silence pressed down harder, weighing on her chest. What lay hidden in the cold, oppressive shadows? Moving further into the basement, an unseen weight seemed to push against them, like a living thing determined to close off their escape. Then, from the depths, a low groan filled the air, creeping through her like cold fingers. The sound twisted the terror already coiling in her gut, demanding her attention. "Did you hear that?" Tyler's grip tightened on her hand. The innocent boy she once knew had transformed into a mirror of her own mounting dread. "Yes, I did," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "We need to keep going." She glanced behind her, expecting to see the kitchen door still gaping open, but the weak light from above had vanished. They were truly alone, engulfed by the darkness beneath the house. Panic clawed at her throat. "There's something here," Tyler exclaimed, his eyes darting around. "Look." Sarah followed his gaze to a flicker at the edge of the room. It was faint but undeniable in outline, shifting in the shadows. She inhaled sharply, her body tensing. "Stay close." As they crept forward, whispers emerged from the void, barely intelligible sounds that weaved through the still air. It was a language not heard by human ears in ages, yet it sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. Her heart pounded fiercely as she struggled to absorb the raw echo of hopelessness spilling towards them. What do they want? Tyler's innocence clashed violently with the looming threat. "I don't know." She felt her mind fracturing, a low haze settling in. "We'll find out." Suddenly, an icy breath caressed her neck, brushing against her skin in a way that was unmistakably real. The air thickened, prickling with a tension that felt like dread tightening around her throat. From nowhere, images flashed in her mind, an old woman's face twisted in agony, moaning softly. Broken clocks, oozing shadows, and whispers of betrayal wrapped around her thoughts like a fog, obscuring her vision with horror. "Mom!" Tyler's shout broke through the cacophony, grounding her for a moment. She turned and saw a glimmer faint light flickering deeper in the basement. Instinctively, she pulled him down a narrow corridor marked by crumbling stone walls, the whispers growing more frenzied. "Mom! They're angry. Please!" Tyler's voice rang with urgency. "Stay behind me!" she yelled as the flickering light grew brighter, illuminating their path. Each step was like wading through mud, their heavy breaths echoing off the stone. "What if we can't get back?" Tyler's eyes were wide, glued to the growing light that threatened to expose whatever was lurking in the darkness. "There has to be a way out," she snapped, but uncertainty lingered. A weight settled in her stomach. This wasn't just about escaping the basement anymore. The floor shifted beneath them, an ominous tremor that sent them stumbling. Eyes darting, she pointed to the light and urged Tyler onward. "We can't stop." As they approached, the light wavered, revealing a door ancient, wooden, cracked, with carvings etched into its surface that seemed to throb with a sickening rhythm. Something from beyond beckoned, a faint melody luring her closer. "Mom," Tyler trembled. What if it's a trap?" The shadows shifted, shapes undulating against the walls. They drew nearer as Sarah hesitated. Something whispered her name, a seductive entreaty promising knowledge that left a trail of dread in its wake. "Do you want to see what lies behind this door?" The voice echoed. Through her mind, seductive and chilling, there was no way back. Fear surged into her heart, a tempest brewing within. She bit her lip, her instincts raging against the fire of curiosity. What secrets awaited her across that threshold? With one last flicker of doubt, Sarah took a trembling breath, ready to change everything, a choice that might alter their fate forever. She grasped the handle, the icy metal biting into her palm, and pushed it down, heart racing. But before she could pull it open, another voice echoed in her mind, louder, sharper. "Do not let them in." As the door slowly creaked open, Sarah's breath caught, her heart pounding as shadows loomed closer. What awaited them on the other side? The promise of revelation clashed with terror, and uncertainty hung like a noose over them. The darkness seethed restlessly, eager to consume whatever light remained. What truth lay behind that door? There was no turning back now. The door resisted at first, creaking as if protesting a decision made long ago. Sarah's grip tightened, a visceral anxiety coursing through her veins. "Mom! Please don't!" Tyler cried out, but her resolve held firm against his plea. The moment she forced the door open, the air turned electric, alive with a heavy pulse that echoed in time with her racing heart. An unnatural light spilled from the doorway, flickering like a dying flame. It cast strange shadows on the walls, shapes that danced and whispered secrets only the damned could hear. She stepped through with Tyler clutched tightly in her hand, dragging him into the unknown. Inside the room, time warped. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting not just their image but visions of nightmares, terrified faces, twisted bodies, and darkness blooming like ink. It felt like walking into a living painting of suffering. The whispers surged louder, drowning out their own thoughts, clawing at their minds. "Look!" Tyler whispered, his voice barely cutting through the din. He pointed to the farthest mirror, where a figure stood, obscured by shadow yet undeniably present. It was a woman, her mouth twisted into a rictus of despair, eyes hollow and sunken. "Who is she?" Tyler's voice trembled, a fragile thread holding back unrestrained fear. I don't know," Sarah breathed, stepping forward involuntarily. Something about the woman called to her, a pull that felt both wrong and compelling. Staring into the mirror, it was as if time stood still. The woman's mouth moved, wordless at first, but slowly forming hauntingly coherent syllables, begging, promising, threatening. "Help me." The plea reverberated in Sarah's mind, coaxing her in a way she didn't fully understand. But as she stepped closer, the realization crashed over her. Every face in every mirror cried out for release, each one trapped in anguish. She stumbled back, terror eclipsing curiosity. "No!" Tyler shouted, backing away, eyes wide. "Mom! We have to go." The room seemed to tremble in response to their fear. The mirrors began to ripple like water, distorting the girl's reflection into grotesque sunderings. "Do not let them in." The warning flared again, but now it slipped by like water through her fingers, drowned out by the rising tide of whispers. Suddenly, the mirrors burst into chaos. Faces pressed against the glass, mouths opening in silent screams, reaching out with desperate fingers that would never touch them. Sarah felt an ice-cold wind surge from the depths beyond the mirrors, stealing away her breath and sense of self. "Mom! Make it stop!" Tyler screamed, and at that moment, she felt a pull not from the haunted figures, but from the door they had just come through. A connection, shimmering and faint, looping them back to safety. In that brief moment of clarity, every instinct screamed at her to leave, to escape the new hell clawing at their minds. "Run!" Sarah shouted, snatching Tyler's wrist and yanking him backward. The shadows writhed and slashed at them as they raced through the door, slamming it shut behind them. Silence fell, suffocating, weighted as if the very air was heavy with the memories of anguish they had left behind. Heart pounding, mind racing, Sarah turned to Tyler. "Are you okay?" But Tyler's eyes were locked on the door, horrified understanding shimmering in his gaze. "What if they come after us?" The walls around them hummed with an unfamiliar energy, the house itself seeming to awaken. The visions behind the door, the woman's haunting cry, echoed in Sarah's mind like a warning bell tolling for mercy long lost. "Don't look back," she urged, leading him deeper into the basement, but dread gnawed at her as shadows whispered her name through the cracks in the foundation, promising that leaving had only begun a far worse nightmare. Each step deeper felt heavier, the air thickening with the essence of despair. They had made a choice, but what chains had they forged by unsettling powers beyond their comprehension? Would the echoes behind them taunt them forever, or worse, follow them into the light, as they pushed? Onward, the darkness roared, a churning beast that would not rest until it devoured everything in its path. What more would they uncover in this labyrinth of lost souls? The grip of terror tightened around Sarah's heart, and she shuddered, knowing with chilling certainty that the worst was yet to come. "Mom, what if we never find our way out?" Tyler's voice trembled, and Sarah's resolve began to waver. "Just hold on, honey," she breathed, though doubt clawed at the edges of her sanity. "We will find a way." But as she spoke, the shadows grew restless, thickening into something corporeal. The fight for their lives was only just beginning, and the cavernous blackness of the basement whispered promises of despair as they descended further into the abyss. What would they awaken in the depths of darkness? With each step deeper, the answer hung like a noose above, waiting to tighten. They moved further into the gloom, Tyler's small hand a weight of dread in Sarah's grip. The darkness wrapped around them like a living thing, pulsing with a life of its own, each breath drawing in the chill of something ancient and sinister. Dispersed whispers floated around them, lingering just at the edge of comprehension. "Do you hear that?" Tyler asked, peering into the shadowy confines around them. His eyes darted, wide and fearful. I think so," Sarah stammered, her voice barely a whisper, fearing the ominous energy that throbbed in the air. The walls seemed to close in, breathing alongside them, suffocating their courage. They reached a fork in the dim corridor. To the left, the stench of mildew and decay threatened to pull them down what looked like a forgotten tomb. To the right, a faint flickering light offered a flicker of hope. But hope felt dangerously thin in this place. "Mom, we should go back," Tyler pressed, his voice a frantic tremor. "Please." The shadows around them writhed, almost as if they were listening. Sarah's heart pounded. It was never just darkness that scared children, it was the fear of what lay within it, what might lurk just beyond sight. "Let us try the light," she rushed out before she lost her nerve. They slunk toward it, each step echoing through the hollow silence. As they turned the corner, a room unfolded before them, dominated by an unfinished wooden table strewn with worn books and mysterious artifacts. Strange symbols marred the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. The flickering light emanated from a single bulb that hung low, casting stark shadows that danced like phantoms. "Shoo!" Sarah hissed, motioning for Tyler to stay quiet as she moved farther inside. Her instincts screamed at her to leave, but curiosity held her captive. Among the clutter, a heavy book lay open in the center of the table, its pages yellowed with age. Intrigued, she leaned over it, tracing the strange insignia with her fingers. The air thickened around her, charged, almost reverent. "Mom, we shouldn't touch it," Tyler urged, dread coloring his tone. "What if it's cursed?" "Cursed," she echoed, the word hanging between them like a death sentence. Then came a sudden shattering crash, a cacophony of sound reverberating from the hallway they had just descended. Sarah jumped, heart racing as fear collided with the urge to escape. "Mom!" What was that? Tyler's panic was palpable, infecting her own senses with terror. Grabbing Tyler, Sarah returned to the hallway, her mind racing with possibilities. The door they had shut behind them, could it be opening? The connection they felt to that room grew stronger, darker. As they reached the corridor, she froze. A figure stood silhouetted at the edge of the flickering light, a twisted mockery of humanity. It was her. No, it was a version of her that she couldn't trust. Eyes wide, flesh pale and dripping with something resembling shadow. It grinned, eyes full of malicious glee. "Help me," it whispered. A surge of raw dread coursed through Sarah's veins. "No!" she screamed, shaking Tyler awake from his fear. "Run!" she shouted again, dragging him backward, desperate to escape. They stumbled back into the cluttered room, desperately searching for another way out, panic twisting and tightening inside her chest. But the shadows were shifting closer, creeping like vines attracted to their fear, choking their path with darkness. "Mom! What are we going to do?" Tyler's voice cracked, terror flooding his eyes as he darted around. Then it came to her, the books, all those artifacts. Desperation clawed at her mind as she glanced around, searching. Find something, anything that can help. But before she could formulate a plan, the whispers escalated, forming a storm around them. Words clawed at her sanity, demanding attention and never yielding. Then, amidst the chaos, something glinted beneath the table. A small, black object caught the dim light, a dagger perhaps? She lunged for it, heart hammering as she grasped the cold hilt. Mom! What if it's a trap? Better than nothing. She replied, meeting his wide eyes with fierce determination. With their backs against the table, Sarah held the dagger tightly, a talisman against the coming darkness. But as they braced themselves, the figure rushed toward them, shrieking, "You can't escape. You belong here. No. We will not." The words echoed in her mind, a defiance born from terror as they faced the encroaching nightmare. Would the dagger break the curse, or would it plunge them deeper into darkness? With dread coiling in her stomach, people in pain screamed in her mind, and the echoes of betrayal pulsed around them, weakening her resolve. "Mom!" Tyler whispered, voice trembling, a dark weight in the air. What awaited them in the heart of despair? As the shadow surged forward, the world around them began to tilt, slipping into madness. The question hung heavy in the air: would they find salvation or face the abyss forever? The figure lunged, its malevolent grin slicing through the darkness like a knife, and Sarah's heart dropped to the pit of her stomach. She clutched the dagger, fingers going numb around the hilt as cold sweat trickled down her spine. "Stay behind me!" she shouted, voice cracking under the weight of fear, even as the shadow surged closer, its shapeless body merging with the thick darkness around them. Tyler pressed against her, eyes wide with terror. "What do we do?" he whimpered, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Just hold on." She grit out, channeling every ounce of courage she had left. The air grew denser, thick with the malevolent whispers, clawing at her ears, filling her head with doubt. "Get back!" she yelled again as the figure drew nearer, its grotesque form warping and twisting as it approached. The dagger felt heavy in her hand, but she couldn't falter now. She had to protect Tyler. She was all he had. The entity, her twisted doppelganger, lunged, and instinct screamed at her to act. She swung the dagger with all her might, the blade slicing through maniacal laughter. The shriek that followed was a harrowing sound, an echo of pure rage and despair that reverberated off the walls. To her horror, the blade passed through the figure as if it were made of smoke. It reformed almost instantly, a dark swirl of shadowy tendrils reaching out, grasping at the air. "You think you can destroy what has already been created?" it hissed, voice dripping with a sickly sweet mockery. "No!" Tyler cried, clutching his mother's arm. "Don't let it get you." The lights flickered violently, plunging them into a moment of suffocating blackness. Sarah's instincts kicked in, her body moving before her mind could catch up. She grasped Tyler's hand tightly and pressed backward against the clutter of the room. "Over here." Tyler pointed to an old wooden door barely visible behind a pile of shattered debris and strange, dusty trinkets. Without a second thought, Sarah propelled them forward, sweeping the accumulated objects aside in a panic. The whispers grew louder, a chaotic chorus that burrowed into her mind. "You cannot escape," they chanted, the indistinct voices rising and falling, wrapping around her like a vice. The door creaked loudly as Sarah yanked it open, leading into an even deeper part of the building. She stepped inside, and the goblet of darkness followed, curling around the doorway. "Mom, wait!" Tyler shouted as he skidded to a halt. "What if it's worse in there?" The question gnawed at her resolve. What could be worse than facing a shadow that claimed to be her? Yet, Sarah had no choice. The light from the dagger's tiny glimmer flared, pushing back the surrounding shadows for just a moment. "We have to go." They rushed inside. The air was different here, damp and fetid, the scent of decay thickening with every breath. The darkness morphed as they moved, shifting shapes that flickered at the corners of her vision. "Mom?" Tyler's voice wavered, uneasy. A low groan echoed through the chamber, suffocating the air. "Close the door," she shouted, panic rising as she shoved it shut. The lock clicked into place, but not before a tendril of darkness snaked its way inside, curling around the frame. As if it was trying to pull the door open. Breath coming quick, Sarah ripped her gaze from the door and scanned the room. Here, the walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting fractured versions of their reality. Shattered faces stared back at them, twisted and tormented. In one mirror, she saw a glimpse of herself, eyes hollow, skin stretched tight against the bone, looking back with sinister glee. "Help me," echoed, but it didn't sound like her. "Mom, please," Tyler whined, stepping closer to the mirrors, his curious eyes reflecting fear. "Stay away from them," she yelled, yanking him back just as one of the mirrored figures lunged forward. A cold, slimy hand reached out, grasping air between them. Sudden realization dawned on her: this was no ordinary room. "They're trapped," she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. "What do you mean?" Tyler's brow wrinkled. In confusion mixed with dread, before she could answer, the shuddering of the door intensified, and the shadows thrashed violently, clawing at the barrier between them. A voice, deep and guttural, sent shivers racing down her spine. "You will join us, they will all join us." In that moment, a terrible understanding washed over Sarah. She stepped into a place where darkness flourished, a realm that thrived on fear and despair. And they were running out of time. "Run!" she screamed, abandoning the mirrors, dragging Tyler along as they fled deeper into the void, desperate for escape. But what awaited them in the heart of this cursed labyrinth? How far would they go to find the light? The shadows whispered their answer, growing fainter as they ran into the depths: "You can't escape. You are part of us now." The passage narrowed, walls closing in as Sarah and Tyler sprinted through the abyss. The air grew heavier, each breath a struggle against the unseen weight that pressed upon their chests. The whispers intensified, merging into a cacophony of terror that clawed at her sanity. With every step, she felt something more than the shadows, something that watched and waited. "Mom, I can't," Tyler gasped, his voice cracking under the pressure of their nightmare. His legs wobbled, the exhaustion threatening to pull him down into the darkness. "Just a little further," she urged, barely recognizing her own voice, strained and desperate. But deep down, dread gnawed at her. What if they ran forever? What if the darkness was all that remained? Ahead, a flicker of light caught her eye, a soft, pulsating glow that promised hope, drawing her forward like a moth to flame. "Look, Tyler! Over there!" she shouted, quickening her pace. With each step toward the light, the shadows behind them swirled angrily, howling in dread. It felt alive, the darkness grasping for them with long, tormenting fingers. She turned, her heart thundering as she saw it, a mass of shadowy tendrils coiling and twisting, ready to strike. "Faster!" she cried, pulling Tyler along with a fear-driven urgency. As they neared the light, the room opened wider, a vast chamber filled with flickering lanterns that clung to the walls like lost souls. But the moment comfort seeped in, it vanished, replaced by a sense of foreboding. The lanterns burned with an eerie flame that cast grotesque shadows across the walls, each flicker reminding her of the figures they had just left behind in the mirrors. "Stay close," she whispered, hoping it would keep the terror at bay. They stepped deeper into the chamber, only to freeze at the sight before them. Surrounding them was a circle of mirrors, tall, imposing, and bathed in that sickly light. Each surface simmered with dark reflection, twisting their likeness into something that was not quite human. One mirror displayed a scene of another time. It showed Sarah's past, a family gathering, smiling faces, laughter echoing through the years. She reached out, entranced, wanting to touch the happiness that felt so distant now. But Tyler pulled her back, eyes wide with horror. "Mom, don't. It's trying to trick you." Suddenly, the whispers ramped up, drowning her thoughts. "Join us, it's so much better here, we can make you whole." The voices sang a haunting melody, weaving around her mind, and Sarah felt her grip on reality starting to slip away. "No!" she spat, shaking her head violently. "We're leaving." She turned and yanked Tyler forward, but before they could take a single step, the mirrors erupted into chaos. Figures surged from the glass, screaming silhouettes clawing for escape, entwining the air with sorrowful wails. Sarah's heart raced as chains of shadow clinked and clanged, binding the figures back to their reflective prisons. "Help us! Save us!" the voices cried, morphing into a deafening roar. It enveloped her, pulling at her very essence, and for a split second, she felt the urge to turn back to enter the twisted reflection and never return. "No!" She pressed on, dragging Tyler just as the shadows lashed out, striking the ground beside them, leaving fissures of dark energy swirling in their wake. They veered sharply, trying to evade the solid darkness slithering closer, and moved toward a door at the far end of the chamber, glowing with an inviting warmth. But as they approached, the whispers jolted in unison, louder and more sinister. "You cannot leave. You belong to us forever." With every ounce of strength, Sarah slammed the door open, its hinges creaking like bones. A blinding light poured out, and she shoved Tyler ahead. But the moment they crossed the threshold, darkness surged in, a final, desperate grasp that caught her heel. "Mom!" Tyler screamed, reaching back. The shadows closed in all around her, a dark embrace she could not fight. A cold wave washed over her, wrapping her in despair as she lost her footing. Would this be the end of their fight, or was there still a shimmer of hope waiting on the other side? As she teetered on the edge, the darkness whispered an answer, and the last thing she heard before everything went black was Tyler's terrified cry, "Mom!" Blackness engulfed Sarah, a heavy blanket of despair that seemed to stretch for eternity. Sounds distorted in that void, echoing through her mind like distant thunder. The fear, an electric current coursing through her, made her heart thud like a war drum. Yet, just as she'd surrendered to it, flickers of warmth and light pierced through the darkness, pulling her back, tugging at her very essence. Gasping, she was thrust into a world anew. The blinding light faded into muted hues, revealing a desolate landscape, a vast expanse of gray, mist swirling at her feet like ghosts returning to haunt forgotten memories. She stood alone, disoriented, her instincts screaming of danger. "Tyler," she called, her voice cracking under the strain of panic. No reply came, only the echo of her own voice that fluttered out into the desolation. Surrounding her were walls of fog, shifting and whispering secrets that tickled at her ears. Straining to get a grip, Sarah stumbled forward, heart racing faster than the shadows that seemed to follow her. Desperation clawed at her throat as the memory of Tyler's terrified scream flashed in her mind. The air felt cold, every breath frosty and laden with the sticky weight of dread. "I have to find him," she murmured, pushing through the curtain of fog. It swirled reluctantly, but opened just enough for her to forge ahead. Suddenly, ahead of her, figures began to materialize from the mist. Shadowy forms, twisted and grotesque, their faces twisted into expressions of eternal torment. The horror sank into the pit of her stomach. They reached for her, wispy fingers grasping at her clothes like dead leaves caught in an autumn breeze. Join us," they beckoned, their voices a haunting abyss, full of longing and despair. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head vigorously, but the shadows were relentless, swirling around her ankles, scaling up her legs like a suffocating vine. The whispers grew louder, drowning her thoughts. Images flickered in her mind's eye, the mirrors, the trapped souls pleading for release, and the deep-seated terror of never seeing Tyler again gripped her tight. "Tyler!" she called again, louder this time, her voice breaking through the darkness like a beacon. But as she stepped forward, the ground beneath her buckled, and she stumbled, barely regaining her balance. Panic ignited anew, her heart pounding in her ears as she gazed back at the encroaching shadows, their insistence growing more agonizing. "Mom!" Tyler's voice pierced through the fog, breaking the chorus of the damned. It was distant, yet filled with urgency. "Tyler!" Her heart swelled, infused with a flicker of hope. "I'm coming." She took off toward the sound, the shadows shrieking in furious agony as she ripped free from their grasp. She felt a pull, the malevolent whispers fading into a mere background hum as she raced forward. Follow the light. Follow the sound. Her instincts screamed at her as she barreled through the haze. With each frantic step, she drove deeper into the heart of the darkness, drawn by the echo of his cries, but as she broke through the last swirling mist, her heart sank. She found herself standing before a giant, gnarled tree, its branches twisted and heavy with whispers of those who had fallen before her. The bark pulsated, almost alive, with faces embedded in the wood, mouths opening, begging for reprieve. "Mom," came Tyler's voice again, now from somewhere above, distant and echoing, layered within the creaking ciphers of the tree. She looked up, dread pooling in her veins as she spotted him, suspended among the branches like a marionette tethered by cruel strings. "Tyler!" She screamed, desperation pouring from her heart. "I'm coming." But as she reached out her arms, a shroud of darkness descended, wrapping around her like an unyielding grip. "Join us," the shadows hissed again, and the whispers swelled into a deafening roar, drowning out everything else. In that moment, Sarah realized her fight wasn't just to save Tyler. It was to keep herself from becoming another lost soul ensnared in this eternal nightmare. Would she shatter the hold of darkness and rescue her son? Or would the sinister forces ensnare them both in the web of despair forever? The air crackled with the weight of her decision, as another shadow emerged from within the tree, its chilling form unmistakable in the pale flicker of the still air. With a slow, ominous creaking, the shadow detached itself from the tree, stretching and swirling into a figure cloaked in darkness. Its face was a void, an empty space where features should be, a spectral absence that made Sarah's breath hitch. The figure floated closer, and she could feel the icy breath of despair wrap around her tighter. "Join us," it murmured, the voice indistinct yet strangely familiar, like the distant echo of a loved one lost to time. Every word twisted her gut, she could feel the shadows curling around her like a vice grip. They wouldn't let go easily. "Tyler!" She gasped, but the name was torn from her lips as the figure advanced, the whispers merging into one agonizing sound. "Mom!" It was so close now, and she could almost pretend that it was Tyler's voice, a cruel mimicry, but the facade broke as she saw beyond the shadows. The hollow eyes of the figure glimmered with malice, reflecting her own growing horror back to her. "You can't save him," it hissed, and the shadows pulsed behind it, shifting and writhing like a living entity. Her will to fight surged. Sarah refused to accept defeat. "You're wrong," she cried, her voice trembling but fierce. "I will save my son." In a sudden burst of desperate resolve, she lunged for the tree, clawing at the bark as if it would yield to her touch and help her reach Tyler. But the moment her fingers met the surface, the tree flared with a searing light, and images flooded her mind, flashes of the shadows that once lived amongst her, the faces embedded in the wood now howled with eternal despair. She staggered back, the moment of clarity overwhelming her senses. Memories of her childhood surrounded her, laced with laughter, happiness, but also of secrets that she had buried deep within. There, lurking beneath the joy, was an ancient truth, the truth of darkness that thrived on despair, that fed on fear. "Face it!" she yelled, her voice echoing against the cacophony. "You won't take me or him." The anger surged within her, igniting a flicker of defiance as she reclaimed her power. The shadow hesitated, shifting back, recoiling from the light of her spirit. "You cannot resist forever," it spat, and the darkness surged as if disturbed by her reaction. "You are already one of us." "No," Sarah retorted, a charged fury coursing through her veins. With her heart racing, she forced herself toward the dark mass, pushing against its oppressive presence. "I'm stronger than you." Around her, the swirling shadows began to churn violently, whispering loudly, angry that their grasp was weakening. Faces pressed against the folds of the shadowy veil, each filled with twisted agony, their voices merging into one chant, "Join us or perish." "Tyler!" she screamed, the name ripping through her throat as she fought her way toward the tree once more. Standing beneath it, she gazed up at her son, still trapped high among the branches like a puppet to its master. With a surge of courage, Sarah reached out, her fingers trembling as they sought the warmth of his presence. "I'm here, baby. Hold on." Just as she felt the brush of his ethereal palm against hers, the ground beneath her feet shook violently. The shadow loomed larger, pulling at her, dragging her down, promising an eternity of torment unless she surrendered. "Sarah." Tyler's voice penetrated through, filled with raw urgency. "Don't give in." Determined, breathing with a ferocity that defied the dark, she clung to the vision of him, her heartbeat syncing with the frantic rhythm of their connection. "We'll break this together." The air shimmered, and in that instant, the world around her exploded into blinding light. But at that moment, just when hope ignited within her, an even darker form erupted from the ground, its laugh echoing through the chaos, imploding her confidence. "Together you will never escape this place." As the ominous laughter faded into the air, Sarah realized it was only the beginning. The boundaries of courage and fear blurred, leading her deeper into the heart of darkness. And as new shadows swirled around her, she braced herself for the next confrontation. What hope remained to save her son when the darkness revealed yet another sinister truth? The light shattered the oppressive shadow, forcing Sarah to take a step back. "I can't lose you, Tyler," she cried, her heart pounding in a frigid forest of uncertainty. She could feel the ground tremble beneath her, echoing the chaos that swirled around them. Then she caught a glimpse of him, his small silhouette still caught in the treacherous branches, the shimmering energy between them taut as a bowstring. "Mom, please." His voice echoed around her, laced with fear. "You have to fight." With every ounce of her being, Sarah pushed against the darkness, determination coursing through her. "I will not give in," she yelled, lifting her eyes toward the towering branches. "You hear me, shadows? You can't have us." The shadowy figure grew larger, swirling like a tempest. "You already belong to us," it hissed, trying to slither through her defenses. "Join the lost souls. You are nothing without the darkness." "No." Sarah's voice soared like a phoenix in the ashes. "We are not lost. We've fought too hard for our lives." She felt the shadows swirling, clawing at her back, clamoring for a chance to consume her spirit. Suddenly, Tyler's voice pierced through the chaos. "Mom. Just reach for me." He spread his arms wide, and in that moment, he became her anchor, a beacon of hope in an encroaching storm. Sarah channeled her love for her son, taking a careful, deliberate step toward the tree. The light around her intensified, shimmering and crackling with energy. She pictured all the memories she had of Tyler, the laughter, the bedtime stories, the warmth of hugs that felt like home. Together, she whispered to herself, fingers straining toward her boy. With each stride, the ground trembled and echoed her resolve. The shadow recoiled as if burned by the light of her spirit, whispering threats that tingled at the back of her mind. "Join us!" it shrieked, the faces within the darkness twisting with rage. "Face despair." "Mom!" Tyler cried, desperation leaking into his tone. "Please don't let go." She felt that tether between them, the love that refused to be broken. "I want tea." She clawed at the air, and for a brief moment, she felt something warm, tangible, Tyler's fingers brushing against her. "Grab my hand," he urged, the words spilling from his mouth like a lifebuoy. "We can do this." With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah lunged forward, reaching until her fingertips grazed his palm. In that instant, their bond ignited, a hawkish cry of defiance roaring through the chaos. "Yes." She felt it, a jolt of energy up her arm, infusing her with renewed strength. "Let us break free together." The shadows writhed and shrieked, their hold fracturing as bright light pushed through like a blade. And with a final, desperate shriek, the dark figure unraveled into streams of despair, fading like autumn leaves carried away by the wind. Together, they tumbled backward, falling from the grasp of darkness. With a thunderous crash, they landed under the ancient tree, roots of determination anchoring them to the fragile earth. Gasping, Sarah pulled Tyler to her chest, relief flooding her. "We did it, baby. We did it." Tears of joy streamed down her face, a release from the weight they had carried. As they stood, the landscape morphed, the gnarled tree began to shimmer, transforming into a luminous beacon, shedding light on the remnants of lost souls that blended into the background, finally freed from their torment. "Mom? Are they gone?" Tyler asked, looking up at Sarah with eyes both cautious and bright. "Yes, honey," she whispered, wiping her tears. "They're free now. We are too." And as they walked together toward the light, the darkness faded into nothingness, the whispers replaced by the tranquil melody of hope. They emerged from the depths, the familiar warmth of Oak Hollow greeting them as the first rays of dawn pierced through the veil of night. "I knew we could do it," Tyler smiled up at her, one hand clutching hers tightly. "Yeah," she breathed, her heart healing, the burdens of the night beginning to lift. "We're stronger together." They stepped forward, into a world untouched by darkness, ready to embrace whatever came next. And as the sun rose high above, Sarah felt a flicker of promise, a fiery determination to live free, their laughter echoing into the dawn. This was their farewell, but it was also a new beginning. And as far as they could see, the horizon stretched wide with endless possibilities. Hold on tight to the light, watch for the shadows, they can deceive. But always remember, you'll never truly be lost as long as you have love. If you loved this story, make sure you subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss our next exclusive adventures. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions about the ending and what you think will happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this conclusion. Let us spread the excitement and keep the heart of storytelling alive.